Yeah.
So the name first in, last out. And so they did, it was the Air Force that allowed women into their forces. And then the Army was next, and then the Navy was the last to allow women to come become part of their organizations. So they're very proud, WDs are very proud that they were the fourth. How I got into it, I was at the University Women's Club, and a woman from was guest speaker, and she had written a book about women in the Army. At the end of her presentation, she said, "Well, the book about women in the Army has been written, and the book about the women in the Navy has been written, but the book about women in the Air Force has not been written. It will not be written." So the women in my club came, "Glad, you should spearhead that." So that very week, I was visiting a dear friend of mine in a nursing home in Gravenhurst. And I said, "Doris, you would have been pleased to hear a speech the other night about women in the Army." Um, and she said, I know everything there is about being a woman in the war. I'm a WD." Now, I had been a neighbor of Doris's for over 30 years. I had no idea she was ever in the war. The only association I ever made with Doris in the war was that she used to serve at the Legion in the bar. That was the only association that I ever, well, for 2 more hours, she told me. And I thought, my goodness, this must be told. This has to be told, or it will die with her. So that very weekend, or that very week, there was a big reunion coming up in Ottawa with WDs. So I was there, and I interviewed nonstop. It was just the most incredible time for me. Um, I When I asked them why they joined, there wasn't, and these they were 19 years of age. They were just young teenagers, and they all said, "Well, I'm joining to beat Hitler." And that was their terminology. That's the way they described their time overseas. And fighting Hitler. What a strange kind of world we would be back then. And the Air Force was quite insistent that their logo be the same as the men's, but as you can see at the very bottom of that logo, it says Women's Division, and that's where WD comes in. They're very proud of that. And the first officers are all around the table. The one in the middle at the very back was a very strong woman. She had administrative abilities and was very, very competent. And the reason that they were able to appoint her was that her husband had just been killed in the Army overseas, and she needed something to do. And so she was just the person who use her mourning, but also to build one of the strongest companies that we could have had in Canada. And the rest of the women around that table are very famous for their parts in the founding of it. And this is the Royal Highness Princess Alice, who was inspecting these. These are all Canadian women in their uniforms, and you'll notice the hats. You'll see other hat styles as we move on. This one is called the tea cozy style. The book itself is 8 chapters, and it goes through the various parts of being a WD. But it's a bit different. The book is laid out because it's the only book written about WDs. I had to find information not just from personal interviews with the women themselves, but I had to find little personal stories all over. And I thought, well, how can I get that in there? So one of the memories for me was when I was doing Appendix 2. I got a bunch of wonderful stories by a gang of WDs way out west, and they had met after the war was over. They would meet together, And at one point, a few years after the war was over, they said to each other, you know, we better write some of this down or we'll just forget it all. So they did. And I happened to find that. And so I had to, I couldn't just print it without their knowledge. So I asked if I sent out requests, and they were absolutely over the moon that their stuff was going to get into my book so that it's in black and white and they can do it. So it's that kind of thing. There are lots of written and taped words and so on. And then in Appendix 1 are the actual interviews with these women and their method of telling me what they were doing during the war is another. The other part of the book, which is sort of interesting, is it also includes the nursing sisters. Well, there are hundreds of books written about the nursing sisters. They're just, it's a very, very a public and open knowledge base for nursing sisters. And I kept digging my heels in. Why should I have to include this in this other book where nothing's written about them? But I was visiting my brother in Guelph, Ontario, and we were going over to visit his wife, who was in a nursing home. And when we got there, my brother Ray said, "Glad, I want you to meet this woman down the hall. I think you might find her interesting." So I went down, and it was a nursing sister, but not any worse nursing sister. This woman was the top nursing sister who was over in England training other Canadian nurses coming over to take part in the war. And she trained them. Now, the training that she had to do was for the Air Force men. And it's quite a different style of nursing. They had to deal with the men whose faces would never be the same. They had burns everywhere. And so she was able to do this incredible job with her end of healing men after the war. And I thought, well, that has to get into this book somehow. But then, so in order to include her in the book and her tremendous gift that she was able to do during the war, I also included nursing sisters in the Army and nursing sisters in the Navy. So the three different styles of nursing are in the book as well. And that's the way it was encoded. I guess the other thing about this book is that the foreword was written by Roberta Bondar. She was extremely happy to see that this was covered. And when she attended the opening of the book, and I had about, I don't know, 20 of the WDs were still alive, and she just stepped right up to them and said, "Without you women, I would not be the first woman in space. I would not be the first woman to have a PhD in engineering." And so she just puffed them up. So those women were just, their shoulders were going back and they were even taller and very, very proud. She's a lovely woman. So that's the book. And the way they recruited these women, look at it, in their gorgeous blue uniforms and the airplanes in behind, and look at all these handsome men there. Who wouldn't want to join the Air Force? And oh, sorry, I went back. And they were trained how to march wonderfully well. I don't know whether you can see on my screen, you can see this guy here. It was a man training the women how to march properly. So, and here's one, there's one of the WDs that would come with me when I did presentations on the book at the beginning. And she was in this corps and she just loved it when this screen came up. And she'd always say, "Now, Glad, just point to me. There I am right there with her white belt and her white gloves." I told you that I went up to a reunion in Ottawa. And that's where I interviewed women on the dance floor, in the hotel, at coffee breaks, in the lineups, into the buses, and it was just nonstop. They did not they didn't like to have any speaker. They just they just wanted to talk. So I did a lot of note taking, and that was the way they were most comfortable with. At the end of that reunion, by the way, they stood up and said, well, this is the final reunion we'll be able to have. It was quite evident that the women were getting older. They had walkers and wheelchairs and people to attend to them and so on. And they said, we just can't, logistically, we can't do it anymore. So I felt very honored that I had been part of that final time that they had together. And this is a uniform, it's called the summer uniform. And I didn't realize that the Air Force had a khaki uniform, and this is a khaki colored, it's not blue at all. And this, I put this in there because it's so evident that that these women just enjoy each other. The camaraderie that is around with this group was incredibly evident and often. And their hair had to be done perfectly every day. And the object of the hairstyles was to get it up off the back of their uniforms and shirts. And it had to be so a lot of the women I interviewed said they were many times they were sent back to redo their hair. It wasn't tidy enough and so on. But here's a photo of lots of officers, and all their hair looks quite different. So they were able to adjust with it. And the Air Force is quite insistent that these women keep fit. So they did have a basketball team and a swim team and a volleyball team. And here they are here with one of the guys that is coach. So here's Doris, who is in that summer uniform. Notice that it's a brown. It's not the Royal Air Force blue. And Doris was the one that was in the original thing. She's very proud. She would come with me and still be able to put that uniform that she wore in the war, even though she was 85 years of age. Isn't she lovely? And they had lots of styles there. They had a newer hat. Can you see it's not the tea cozy hat now? It's a much more. And the long coats and their trim purses. And they did everything in the war. They did everything but fly a plane. They were not pilots. It was interesting when they left the Air Force, they were given specific things, but one of the things that they all did was to actually go and take flying lessons after the war was over and they were back home. Oh, here's the hat. The hat's one. So it begins over in the bottom right. That's the tea cozy. And they thought, that's not quite right. Let's do it a little bit more formal. And the one to the left of it. But then the one up above that had a very firm crown on it. And then the final hat that you see, if you see any photos of women in the Air Force with this swoop at the back of form, then they were one of the most recent WDs. They were last to join. Here they are, proud officers ready to go overseas and do their job. And weddings were very common in their lives. These two just lived really quite close to where I live right now. They were down in Torrance, very close to Bala. And they got married in the little Presbyterian church in Torrance. And they both wore their Air Force uniforms for their wedding day. And this group, both men wanted to wear their uniforms, but the women said, no, we're going to wear white. And the woman in the middle, of course, is bridesmaid to both couples. So that's why they got her in that. And here's four of them, all four in their uniforms. Fascinating time. And these women, this group were all trained. The reason I put this in the book, I interviewed a woman, and this photo, it was massive, it was huge in her living room or dining room. And it was all over, but I don't know whether you can see in writing under each one, she identified that person, not just by name, but where they came from Canada, from Vancouver and down in Nova Scotia, all of, Toronto, like they were from all across Canada. And when I was interviewing her, I said, "Oh, isn't that fascinating?" She said, "Yes, it was just meant to me that I knew everybody from all over Canada." And she did. She was a very interesting woman, that one. The one that had the woman here that had this, it was in Bracebridge actually that she lived. And at the end, when the WDs left the Air Force, they were given a choice of you could get paid for the number of hours you were in the Air Force. You could also get a plot of land. You could get a bedroom suite, or you get even a washing machine. Well, this woman chose to take the cold hard cash, and she went out and she bought herself a fur coat. So she always got a hand for that. She thought that was pretty good. But they learned how to do everything except fly plane. They didn't mind getting their fingers dirty, and they didn't mind understanding and learning all about the motors and the airplanes themselves. This is a very famous shot, which I think, Marcy, you meant in your introduction that the book was given to to Queen Elizabeth. And when she did open it, and she got this picture. She opened it at this particular page in the book. And when she was a young, 20-year-old, she wasn't Air Force. She would drive one of these tractors and these Jeeps around in the Army. She was, and she just loved that picture because she knew about all those engines and the cars that she used to drive during the war as well. Fascinating. Here's some more. They're up doing right there, making those airplanes fly. They did everything. You can see them crawling all over. Interesting. Their uniform did not have pants. Their uniform was a skirt and a jacket and a shirt, a shirt. So they found that when they were having to do this kind of thing, that they really did have to include pants in their uniform guards. So here they are, thank goodness. But they would always have to wear their full uniform, skirt, jacket, so on, over to the area where they were working in the clinic, and then they would change into their pants and then go up and do the work wherever they were assigned. But to go back to the barracks, they had to put that skirt back on. So it wasn't as much like as the men that was part of it. This is the dope area, and they were working in highly toxic environment. So, and it was paint, of course, and they would every hour on the hour, they had to leave the paint area, get out of that part completely, and go outside and breathe air. They had to drink milk, and they also had to be certain that when they went back in, they would breathe out, not coming in. So at the end of one of the things that I found out in interviewing these women, the ones that worked in the dope area, there wasn't one woman that died or had significant effects of being in the dope area after the war was over. And they one wonders, was it the milk? Was it the breaking out from, the toxic area and getting fresh air enough? What was it that allowed that to carry on without any kind of lasting difficulties of doing that? Here she is. You can see her mask. She just took it down for the picture. Oh, that was right. They also had magnesia pills they would take with the milk. Fascinating what they did there to help them. Well, this woman didn't mind being in the Empress with two handsome pilots on either side of her. It was fun. I put this in just for fun. It's out of bounds beyond this point, I said. And that's on Bloor Street outside. It was a graduating class. See, they're all there, but the three men in the front were the ones that trained them. And they did go overseas. They certainly did. And this was the first unit that went. And the woman that I interviewed for this one, she was thrilled to be one of the first to get overseas. And they're all lined up with their packs in front of them. And this is the one that she's ready to go. And there she is with her tea cozy hat. So she was one of the first to go. And she married a pilot, and when they came back, they married back in Canada after he was a pilot and he existed. And after they got married, she did go. She's a pilot as well. But I was fascinated to see how they got these WDs to be there. And this was a photo that was published all across Canada in magazines, and certain newspapers carried it too. But look at this. All these beautiful women in their uniforms sitting on the bonds in the south of England. Isn't that incredible? And they were recruiting. That's what they used to recruit these women to go over and fight Hitler. Incredible time. And this is an important photo. You can see there's all those 4 rows of men at the top, but you see at the bottom there's one full row of women, WDs. All those men, there's not one of them that returned home. They were all killed during war. Air Force. The bottom, not one woman was killed overseas. They all were alive. So pretty sobering. And that's why people like Roberta Bondar said, what a tremendous gift you gave Canada by training these women to do what they did. Because and for those of you who are interested in certainly wartime planes, they're all in the book. I had a very famous airplane enthusiast go through all of these. The Anson's there, and the Fleet Finch was a very popular. And the famous Bristol Bolingbroke, it's in the book as well. And look at this one, the Norseman. That's actually able to go over water, and that one's ready to. There it is, up in the air, ready to land in water. And the Cornell was a very famous World War II. And this little tiger moth, you could actually still go and have a ride in one. If there's a place outside Stainer that has a tiger moth, and they've got a pilot that will take you up. And if you do go and get one, you'll sit in the front and the pilot's behind you in that seat. it was fascinating to me that many of those WDs would go and have a ride in those Tiger Moths. They thought they were quite wonderful planes. And the Cessna is another famous one. That's the Hamilton Airport down there. And this was inside the Lysander was there. You could see it. And the famous Lancaster, it's still, they still fly it. I think one day a year they're able to get that thing up. It's out of the Hamilton one. And the Mosquito was a very famous World War II plane. The British Commonwealth talked about this air training that they did, and they used Canada as a training field to train them from all across the world. And so they would go out to these training fields, and you can see they're all up and down the coasts of where they would get training. And that was our country that was able to do that for them. Oh, here's Fran Oakes. This is we're into the nursing sisters one. So that's the girl that trained all these women, or all these men with burns and so on. That was her. And there she was the day I interviewed her. I wanted her to come down for the opening of the book when it launched, and my brother was going to bring her down, but she died 2 days before. So she did see the book, though. I had it up for her to look through it. Actually, that was interesting. Before it went to the press, I did present it to Fran and say, well, and so when she got to the nursing sister section, she said, yes, that's right. And the next page, wow, you certainly got that right there. And so she was editing my writing for me as it was about to go to press. Fascinating woman. And this is Madge Wilsman, and Madge represented the Army nursing sisters. And then there she is the day I interviewed her. And then the Jean Dougal, this is the Navy woman. And she was a nursing sister in the Navy. And there she is in her uniform as well. And the nursing sisters were certainly in England, and they had their hospital in the south of England. And the way they would go from their barracks to the hospital, they would ride their little bicycles. And this is what it looked like. It was one of those temporary hospitals set up. And when the men would come in, they would just land them and put them right into hospital. And this is a section down in Trenton, and we had some of the uniforms that the women wore. It's quite well done. You can see it down there today. Oh, and the women, the nursing sisters also married. So this one decided she was marrying her husband in the Army, and she decided to wear her veil as part of her getting married. And there they are coming out of the little, in the south of England. And this is the graduating class of nursing sisters. It was used only, the nursing sisters were used only in the war. It disappeared. I thought they were Roman Catholics, but it had nothing to do with that. It was mostly to do with the fact that they were nurses in full uniform. And there they are in the south in the bomb shelter. So you see one coming out from the side. And the therapist, working away with wounded. And there's a photo with the cliffs of Dover and behind. This is an interesting one. They called me down, and as many WDs as they could find to go down to just outside of Belleville to when they presented this stone. You can't find any monuments particularly to women in the Air Force. or to women in the Army. It's very difficult to find any representation or any, I don't know, memorial that well, like we've just finished November the 11th. I'm sure there isn't one of you that heard about the nursing sisters or the WDs or women in the Army. It's incredible to me how, but they did decide that we did have to have something down there. So they called as many WDs around, and they all came down. And this monument was covered with the Air Force flag. And at the appropriate moment, they took it off. And as you can say, we serve that men may fly, and that was their logo. We serve that men may fly. When I say that to high school students, they get very upset. Glad, why couldn't they fly? Why wouldn't one be able to? I said, wait a minute. In wartime, you could, if you were a woman, you could be a secretary, you could be a nurse, you, you could be a stenographer. There aren't too many things that a woman could do. And then they realized what Roberta Bondar said in the book, that they did so much for them. So at this ceremony, they all were, there was a circle around it, and they said, all as a unit, we serve that men may fly. And they were very proud of that. They were proud to say that. And this is how the book launched, and that's Roberta right there with the book. I guess that's the only picture of the book, isn't it? But have you seen it? No, I guess you have not seen the book. Yeah, well, that's what it is. And this is the opening of the book, and so there were lots of these women are all WDs in the front row. You can see the Air Force plaid slacks. This is a scarf. Woman over here at the end. So they were very proud to be there. And there's the gang of us. This is my daughter and Roberta and the Singing Club president. Well, there's the front of the book. So that's the presentation, and I would love to have comments and questions and
Looking for more great content like this? Why not check out the Oakville Historical Society's website, YouTube channel, or Facebook and Instagram pages?